Hello and welcome to Heart with Abagaba, the podcast where we celebrate the love, laughter, and little moments that make families shine. Whether you're a parent, grandparent, educator, or simply someone who believes in the magic of childhood, this is your place. Every week, we share real stories, inspiring voices, and joyful conversations that warm the heart and lift the spirit. So grab a cozy seat. It's time to go to Heart to Heart. Stop Smart sponsors Heart to Heart with Abagaba, your one stop destination for stuffing and non medical concierge services for adults, teens, and children. For more information, visit www.staff-smart.org or call 480-875-6871. Welcome to Heart with Abagaba, the podcast where we celebrate families, the wonder of childhood, resilience, and the beauty of becoming. I'm your host, Abby Dominguez. Today's guest didn't just write a story. She created a world her granddaughter could belong to. TL is the founder of Blue Brown Book Group and the author of Delilah versus the Ghastly Grimm, an upcoming middle grade fantasy novel inspired by her real life granddaughter who lives with Dravet Syndrome, a rare and life threatening seizure disorder. Through fast paced adventure and deep emotional themes, TL is on a mission to bring more disabled protagonists into children's literature and more empathy, imagination, and courage into the hands of young readers. This is a conversation about advocacy, family, and the power of seeing yourself in a story. Let's dive in. TL, I am reaching out to you from Mesa, Arizona. Please tell our listeners where we are connecting from and add a short bio.
Sure, absolutely. So I am in Florida, Central Florida, close to Orlando, and you gave me a lovely introduction already. It's all accurate with regard to I am the grandmother of a child with Dravet syndrome, which started me on this journey to writing children's books. I was actually going to write a suspense adult novel and was in a program for that. And as I started writing it, I came across a study by I think it's Cooperative Children's Book Center or some, I can't remember the exact name at this moment,
Mhm.
but it said that there were only 3.4% of children's books that featured a disabled main character.
Oh,
And that kept eating away at me.
yes.
So then it kind of changed my trajectory where I put the adult novel aside and started writing on that because, of course, I have a special needs grandchild with Dravet syndrome. Dravet syndrome is not like regular seizure disorders. It's a genetic mutation,
Okay.
a gene mutation specifically in the SCN1A gene that affects sodium channels in the brain. These
Mm.
seizures can be very, very long. They can
Mm.
be life-threatening. Some of these
Oh,
kids don't last. I know it's very serious. Some of these kids don't live past 20. Some need total care their entire lives. They
oh,
are unable to walk, talk, or and so forth. Now, it works like autism, so it kind of works like a spectrum. So there are children like my grandchild who she's 3 at this time, even though I wrote the book for middle schoolers, it just seemed more appropriate given the topic
right.
a little bit. Yeah, because there's a little bit of dark themes in there, so I
Yeah.
wanted it to be
Hmm.
appropriate.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, so she's on the side of the spectrum where she's able to walk, she's able to feed herself. She
Oh,
does
nice.
yes, yes. But she does get therapy twice a week where I take her, or during the summers, her dad's a teacher, he will take her.
Hmm.
So she goes to therapy twice a week for occupational, speech, and physical therapy, and then a speech therapist will actually go to her daycare and give her an extra session. So we are doing everything that we can for her. And because of her, I really wanted to produce a work that would be more inclusive, given the fact that
Mhm.
there just isn't enough representation in children's books. It's a
Right.
major problem.
Yes, yes. And I'm so grateful that you're here. And I am just so thankful that you wrote the book.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your support.
Oh, you're very welcome. So I wanted to ask you, what inspired you to write Delilah versus the Ghastly Grim, and why now? I know we touched base on some, but any insights you have will be wonderful.
Yes, the inspiration, of course, was the child herself, my grandchild, Delilah. A
Yes.
lot of what is in the book is based on her. So some of the creatures you will find in the book, whether she likes or dislikes them, turns them into a friend or a villain kind of thing.
Hmm.
Even some of the statements that are made, like the creatures call her Yaya, and that is because my grandchild could not, she's actually doing better now, could not pronounce her name, Delilah. So she would introduce herself as Yaya. So I even,
Ah,
so
it's so
everything is very,
cute.
but it's also a strategic book. So
Yes.
I had it edited by two different editors. One was the Hunger Games editor, the editor of the Hunger
Oh, nice.
Yes, because I really wanted to produce a solid work. And then the
Right.
other editor was a literary agent and writer herself. So I
Mhm.
had it go through two rounds of edits to make sure that it was a solid book. It has won
Yes.
multiple awards. It hit the bestseller list on its early release for the category of children's epilepsy health. So on
I
Amazon, it
love
did
it.
that. So
Mm.
it's off to a really good start, but it was definitely Delilah that inspired the book. And not just Delilah. I used to be director of a school for children with disabilities.
Hmm.
And this was before I had a grandchild with a disability. So it feels like a calling to me. It may seem very strange to say that, but first became the director of the school, and then I had a grandchild with the special needs, and then I would have dreams that kind of related to it. So
Oh,
I
wow.
felt myself being pulled and pulled and pulled in the direction to become more involved with this cause.
You were meant for this cause. Yes.
I think so. Yes, that is my belief.
So I know we may have touched on this a little bit, but how has Delilah's journey influenced the story?
Very much so. So everything in the book, my one of the editors calls it's a high concept book. It's actually the style of it seems simplistic and fast paced, like an action packed adventure similar to Percy Jackson, but everything that's in there is strategically placed and high concept. It has meaning. So either it's tied to one area is tied to another and absolutely mandatory for you to get from one place to another.
Yes.
There's an underlying theme that is a Christian theme in the book of forgiveness.
Oh,
There
I love that. Oh.
yes, because the school I worked at was also a Christian school, and I am a Christian, so I wrote that in there. And
Hmm.
then the pieces of the puzzle are kind of indicative of either what she's experiencing as part of her disorder, the Dravet syndrome, or
Yes.
somebody who's going through seizures, or something that is like could be tied to somebody who is experiencing that. Because I feel like when you are not like the main fold of the world, sometimes they treat you differently, people will treat
Yeah.
you differently, and I wanted to touch on that so that the book would be empowering to those who do feel like they're outside of the fold, who don't always fit
Yeah.
in. And I
Yeah.
think most of us at some point or another feel like they don't fit in. I know I've felt
Hmm.
that way.
I know I felt that way too. I'm being from a different country, living in America, having an accent, So, like you said, in one way or the other, there's some part of us that doesn't feel like we fit in. Based on, speaking of Dravet syndrome, thanks to you, I now know I have a little idea of what it is. And I know you explained it beautifully in the beginning, but what is Dravet syndrome and how does it shape the themes in your book?
So I didn't specifically name it in the book, but the book is based on a child with Dravet syndrome.
Right.
It is a seizure disorder. It's caused by a mutation in the SCN1A gene.
Right.
And most of the time, and I believe I'm pretty sure it has to be diagnosed through genetic testing.
Mm-hmm.
But it often occurs in the early years of a child's life. Seizures often occur in the early years of the child's life. So for Delilah, she
Yeah.
had her first seizures in her first year of life. So that's one of the markers of it. The seizures they can be very long, they can be very frequent, and they can be life-threatening.
Oh.
So it's a complicated disorder, and there's no cure for it right now. However, there are organizations working to find one. We've been very fortunate in the way that we have figured out a medication that has pretty much kept her from having seizures for the last year. So she's been seizure free for an entire year, which is a
Oh,
blessing. Yes,
I'm
we're very blessed.
so happy to hear that. And
Thank you.
thank you so very much for shedding more light on Dravet syndrome. I'm sure, like many others who may be listening who have not heard of this syndrome before, they will be more informed. So thank you so very much for sharing it. And I wanted to ask you, why is disability representation in children's literature so important to you? We may have touched on that again, but any additional insights would be lovely.
It's not just representation for children with disabilities, it's proper representation across the
Oh, I
board.
like that. Proper representation. Amen to that.
I mean, think about it. It isn't right. You want the people. There are all different kinds of people in the world, and they deserve to be able to read a story and feel connected to the characters.
Oh, yeah.
That that's what I'm hoping for. A world that is more representative, so that everyone can feel that same level of empowerment. Everyone can see themselves as the hero in the
Yes.
book.
Yes. Yes. Oh, my goodness. I cannot say enough how much I appreciate that. So, what do you hope young readers, especially those with disabilities, take away from this story?
Well, I hope that they do see themselves as empowered by this story. So one of the most important features that I wrote into the book was, I always call it a so-called disability, because in the book, what others would view as a weakness, I turn into the greatest strength.
I
So
love
her
it.
powers are rooted in her disability. So that is her strength. And for me, Delilah is like a light in the world. She's some people sometimes view people who have disabilities as lesser. I disagree with that one.
I disagree. I'm with you on that.
And we all have our strengths and our weaknesses. So the
Oh,
way
yeah.
I presented it in the book was to present, what is the disability as the actual strength. So that you could say it, the weakness becomes the greatest strength kind of thing.
Right.
And I
Right.
think that's almost true for anyone, where even if you're like going through something personal, sometimes that vulnerability or that weakness, that can be turned into what makes you incredibly special and move people's lives.
Oh, yeah. Oh my goodness, I love that. So, what were the processes and challenges of launching your own publishing company to tell this story your ways?
So there's been an incredible learning curve with getting this story out there. I did start my own company, Blue Round Book Group, to get Delilah versus the Ghastly Grid out to the market. And it has been very challenging because I work a full-time job as a psych nurse. And on top of that, I'm having to do what, big five companies have 4 or 5 departments to do. And
Yeah.
I'm doing that on my own. And so it's been very challenging to do all of these things to try and get the word out there, to spread the message, to
Yeah.
encourage people to read the book. All of the technical side of it, I had to learn. It's been a journey, and I won't lie, sometimes it's caused some health problems because I'm working around the clock. Sometimes I get up at 4 a.m. and don't stop till 10 or 11.
Wow.
So it's been a really hard process, but I feel like when you're on a mission, when you have a mission, you have to fight for it. And I'm willing to
Yes.
put in the work to do it.
Yes. Yes. Oh, I'm so inspired by you already. Where can people follow your journey or support the launch of this powerful book?
Thank you so much for saying that. Um, well, I have my own website, www.blueroundbookgroup.com. And then at the very bottom of those pages, you'll see links to the social media. And then on the author's page, you'll see the link to the Amazon book, which if you want a copy, it is on Amazon right now. We've actually done an early release sale of the paperback. The official release is on the 27th, but it is out there right now. And if you know anyone or have ever experienced being on the outside of the fold or feeling like you didn't quite belong, or you're just looking for an action adventure, fantasy, middle grade book, then this is probably something that you'll enjoy.
Oh, it sounds fabulous. I just can't wait to get my hands on one.
Thank you.
So I wanted to, and I really mean that. I really truly mean that. So how did you bring, speaking of the book is available, how did you bring this book from, how did you bring this book to life from start to finish, the writing, editing, designing, and launching it through your own press?
So a lot of it, I had to do research to figure out some of the technical sides, what the interior design of the book is supposed to be to give it the polished edge. I
Mhm.
did hire editors to make sure that it was at the professional level. I did do a lot of research to determine like what fonts are most appropriate for
Yeah.
fantasy, and you have to get those licenses for those fonts. There's a lot that goes into publishing that I think people don't realize. For example, I thought an illustrator and a book designer were the same thing, and they are not.
They're not.
They are
Wow.
not. No.
They're not.
So I had to get an illustrator, but then I also had to figure out the book design. So all of that came with a little bit of a learning curve, but there's information out there if you do
Yes.
the research for it. And then as far as the writing process goes, to be honest with you, a lot of it was truly inspired by my granddaughter. So I would be with her and I would just see some things that would occur, and I would be like, I'm going to infuse that in this book. I'm going to figure out a way to incorporate it. Like, for example,
Mhm.
there's a scene with Kangaroo Council. Well, we were at a fair and she loved the kangaroos. So it was like, very much inspired by her, by what her likes are and dislikes are. And a
Mhm.
lot of it I would get through quiet time, going for walks, kind of
Mhm.
immersing myself in the world. One
Yes.
of my editors felt that I should create almost like a Bible of the world because I created an entire world. Yeah, I created a very elaborate fantasy world, so
Nice.
that the readers and the young kids could really feel like immersed in it.
Oh, oh my goodness. That is so wonderful. Your hard
Thank you.
work shows. Your hard work. You put in so much work and it shows.
I
So,
appreciate that.
oh, so how does Delilah's fantasy adventure mirror real world challenges that children face today?
Well, actually, in the book, she's in uh, dual locations. So her physical body is on Earth.
Mhm.
And what happens is when she has this life threatening seizure, an indigo door opens in her mind that allows her to kind of like when she steps through, she's catapulted to this fantasy world.
Mhm.
And in the real world, and this is similar to what would happen with a child with Dravet syndrome, to stop a seizure, sometimes when it's severe enough, they might have to do what's called a medically induced coma. And so that's
Ah,
what they do with her. But
oh,
when they put her under, it basically traps her in this fantasy.
oh,
Yeah, so
that is
she's in
so
two
beautiful.
locations. She's in two
Yeah.
locations, and I have to find, they come together at a certain point, but she's basically kind of trapped over there, and this ghastly grim is the villain that she must stand up against in
Oh,
order to
oh,
survive.
that is
So
fantastic.
so you can
Wow.
see how that would mirror like a child who's experiencing some life-threatening disorders that would
Yes,
mirror those circumstances.
yes, it will. I can totally see that. And you gave the ship in your book the name the Nord, and later found out about the real organization connected to your granddaughter's diagnosis. Can you tell us what that moment meant to you?
And I did kind of touch upon this because it feels like it it feels like I have been guided toward doing this rather than what in my mind I was planning on doing.
Mm-hmm.
So like when I sat down to write, I wanted to write a book. And when I sat down to write it, I had the full intention to write an adult book. But
Mm-hmm.
then, I saw the study and it kept eating away at me, and I decided to put that aside. And this is my debut children's book.
Oh, love it.
So, yep. And I went that way. But a couple of things came into place. One, I was the school director for a school for kids with disabilities. That was like my first immersion in that. And then I left that, but then I had a grandchild who
Mm-hmm.
was born with, ended up being diagnosed with a disability. So then I got that
Mm-hmm.
little push there. And then when I was writing the book, I had this dream about a boat, and on the boat, it was called the Nord. So when I was writing the next scene, there's a scene where she takes a boat across the Serpentine River and Sea,
Mm-hmm.
and I named the boat the Nord. And it wasn't until the book had gone through multiple edits and was done being written, it was finished, I had done it completely, it was
Mm-hmm.
now in like just tweaking the design of it,
Mm-hmm.
that I was doing research on organizations for that help with disabilities, and I
Mm-hmm.
came across one called the Nord. And I wrote that book.
Wow.
I have never heard of it, never heard of it
Uh-huh.
before, but my boat was named it, and I had no knowledge of that organization before I named the boat that. So then I thought, wow, this is just more reinforcement that I'm almost being divinely
Oh,
guided into
yes.
this
Oh,
mission.
yes. Oh, my goodness. That is, wow. That is so amazing. You were meant to write this book to share with the world, to include people, to include everyone. Oh, my goodness. I just love that. So I have a question that doesn't, that is like, it just came to my mind. Having gone through the writing, the editing, the designing, and launching your own press, like, so what are your thoughts on, this is like a bonus question. What are your thoughts on traditional publishing or self-publishing? Would you rather one or the other?
So I think traditional publishing 100% has some advantages.
Yes.
Um, for example, traditional publishing, they have access to, say, like scholastic book fairs. They have departments that will work on promoting the book.
Yes.
They have connections in place. When you're doing it yourself, those are the challenges that you will face.
Right.
Having said as much, if you're doing it, a lot of traditional writers who have gone the traditional routes are changing their minds and starting to self-publish more.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, you are seeing some people who were traditionally published choosing to self-publish. If you self-publish, you have more control
More
over your
control.
material,
Right.
which is, if you want your story to remain a certain way, then that
Hmm.
is an option. You have you can get it out faster. Like
Faster. Okay.
it usually takes less time to do that.
Hmm.
And then you can kind of pick and choose which way you want it to go. So there are pluses and minuses to everything. I am not
Yes.
opposed to traditional publishing at all.
Hmm.
I just feel like, the representation problem is something that has been in place for a while. And I think
Yeah.
that it exists because there is a barrier that has to be overcome. And I don't think it's down yet. So then
Hmm.
it puts us writers who do want more inclusion into a position where self-publishing may be an option to kind of help bring that barrier down.
Oh, yes. You say it so well. I'm all about inclusion. I wanted to ask you, do you have any final thoughts? And again, could you please share your website, social media handles? I know we touched on this at the very beginning, but this is so powerful. I want to again have our listeners hear it again. Final thoughts, website, social media handles, and any other thing that you want us to know today.
So my final thoughts are, the goal is more inclusive and representative books, and not just Delilah versus the Ghastly, though I 100% hope you do go out there and get a copy of it, and
Mhm.
I hope you love it. But
Mhm.
if you are a writer or a writer, maybe
Mhm.
encourage them to take that route, to share stories that are more inclusive so that we can start closing that gap. That would
I
probably
love
be
it.
lot.
I will.
My book can be found on Amazon.com. It's called Delilah versus the Ghastly Grimm. The paperback is available right now. It is on sale.
Mhm.
There's also an ebook, and the hardback will be coming via Ingram Spark very soon. So that'll be on the 27th. That's the official rollout date. Anybody who wants to learn more about my publishing house, it's called Blue Round Book Group, and that can be found at www.blueroundbookgroup.com. At the very bottom of that page, you'll find links to the social media. So you could just click on those links and you'll have access to the social media. Now, I will say that you will see that it is new social media. I'm a psych nurse, and I really wasn't in the type of person who was wanting to be in the public eye. So I did stay off social media up until the release of this book, pretty much.
Right, right. So TL reminds us what stories can do when they come from the heart. They heal, they inspire, and they include. Her book, Delilah versus the Ghastly Grimm, isn't just a fantasy novel. It's a love letter to children with disabilities, especially her own granddaughter, and a powerful call to make space for every kind of hero in the books we read. And I would say and write, because I like your call to all writers to think about writing inclusive stories. And that is just beautiful. And dear listeners, if this conversation moved you, I encourage you to explore more of TL's work and to share this episode with anyone who believes in the power of inclusive storytelling. TL, I want to thank you so very much for visiting me today on Heart to Heart with Abagaba. Have a fantastic day, and I wish you all the very best
Thank
with
you so much, and
what's
thank you
ahead.
for having me on your show.
You are very welcome. Aspire Behavior Health also sponsors Heart to Heart with Abagaba. They offer monitoring, counseling, medication, and personal care services in a beautiful residential setting. Contact Aspire CBH at outlook.com or call 480-875-6871. Thank you for joining us for another heart to heart moment. I hope today's story touched your heart the way it touched mine. If this episode spoke to you, share it with someone you love. And don't forget to subscribe to this and our YouTube channel so you never miss a moment of connection, inspiration, and joy. The stories and insights shared on Heart to Heart with Abagaba are personal and based on lived experiences. While some of our guests may be licensed professionals in their fields, the content of this podcast should not be considered legal, medical, or mental health advice. For expert guidance, please consult a qualified professional directly. Until next time, take care of your heart, take care of each other, and keep celebrating the love that makes us family. Celebrate!